My name is Jessica Wong. I'm 32 years old, and the story I'm about to tell happened last fall, when I made the most complicated decision of my life. Sending my daughter Lily to Brightwood Academy Preschool, the school run by my own older sister. I still feel a dull ache in my chest whenever I think back to that time. I became a single mother not because of tragedy, but because of abandonment. My husband left when Lily was 3. He said he wasn't built for the kind of patience our daughter needed. He packed his bags one morning and never came back. In the months that followed, I was trying to heal while learning that Lily had been diagnosed with ADHD. School reports described her as easily distracted, emotionally sensitive, and challenging to manage. A week after one of those reports, my career finally gave me the break I'd been chasing for nearly a decade, a promotion that meant longer hours and less time at home. That was when my sister Diane called. "Jessica," she said confidently, "you don't need to worry anymore. Brightwood has a special program for children like Lily. I'll reduce your tuition. I'll personally make sure she gets extra attention." I felt torn. Diane wasn't just my sister. She raised me after our parents passed away. She was strong, disciplined, respected, but she was also unforgiving. Growing up, mistakes weren't lessons, they were failures. Later that night, her husband Frank called. His voice was calm, warm, reassuring. He told me rumors about the school were exaggerated. "Not everyone understands high-quality education," he said. "Discipline gets results." Frank was powerful, well-connected, the kind of man people didn't challenge. For nights, I lay awake watching Lily sleep, wondering if I was making the right choice. In the end, I convinced myself that family love would soften Diane's strictness. I was wrong. On Lily's first day, she clung to my sleeve, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, please don't leave me. I want to stay with you." When her little hand slipped from mine, a cold fear ran straight down my spine. 3 weeks later, my phone rang, and everything I believed about my family shattered. The weeks after Lily started at Brightwood didn't collapse all at once. It cracked. Small fractures in what I wanted to believe was a perfect solution. The second week, I woke up in the middle of the night to screaming, raw, terrified, like someone was chasing her in her dreams. I sprinted down the hallway, heart hammering, and found Lily curled into a tight ball on her bed, drenched in sweat, eyes wide open, but not seeing me. When I pulled her into my arms, her fingers dug into my skin like she was trying to anchor herself to reality. "Mommy," she whispered, breath shaking, "don't let them take me." "Take you where?" But when I asked, she went silent. Her gaze drifted toward the corner of the room, like she could still see something standing there. After that, the nightmares became routine. Every few nights, she'd wake up sobbing, and every time I tried to get answers, she would stare past me and say nothing. Not like a child refusing to talk, like a child who'd learned that talking was dangerous. Mornings were worse. Lily stopped eating breakfast. She'd push her plate away even if it was pancakes, her favorite, and clutch her stomach. "My tummy hurts," she'd whisper. Then, barely audible, "Mommy, I don't want to go." I told myself it was normal. New school anxiety, big change, kids adjust. They always do. But one evening, I caught her doing something that made my blood run cold. She was sitting alone at the dining table with an empty plastic cup. She lifted it, set it down, lifted it, set it down, careful, precise, like she was practicing for a test she couldn't afford to fail. "What are you doing, baby?" I asked softly. Lily flinched so hard the cup rattled, her face drained of color. "I'm practicing," she said quickly, eyes locked on the cup. "I can't spill anymore." My throat tightened. I slid into the chair beside her. "Spill what?" I asked. "Honey, spills happen. It's okay." She shook her head so fast it was like she was trying to shake off the words themselves. "No," she whispered. "It's not okay." I leaned closer. "Did someone get mad at you at school?" Her lashes fluttered, her lips parted like she wanted to tell me everything. And then the fear slammed the door shut. "I'll be good," she murmured. "I promise I'll be good." That sentence started showing up everywhere. A spill at home wasn't a spill anymore. It was a threat. One night, Lily accidentally knocked over a bowl of hot soup on the table. The soup didn't even touch her. No burn, no injury. But Lily froze. Her eyes widened in pure horror. Her shoulders rose, tight and rigid. She began to shake, like she was standing at the edge of something. Then she whispered, broken, "Please don't punish me. Please don't." Punish. That word didn't belong in the mouth of a 6-year-old. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep with her stuffed bunny pressed to her chest, I stepped into the kitchen and called Diane. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp, like she'd been expecting me. "What's wrong?" she asked. I tried to keep my tone steady. "Lily's having nightmares. She's terrified of making mistakes. She keeps saying she can't spill anything or she'll get punished." Diane sighed, one of those long, exhausted sighs that made you feel like you were the problem. "Jessica," she said, "you spoil her." My grip tightened on the phone. "I'm not spoiling her. I'm worried." "She needs discipline," Diane replied, "especially with ADHD. Structure, boundaries, consequences." Consequences. The word hit me like a slap, because suddenly it didn't sound like education. It sounded like control. I want to know what's happening at school," I said. "Is someone scaring her?" Diane's voice cooled. "No one is scaring her. We are teaching her." Teaching her to fear spilling a cup? Diane's patience snapped just slightly, enough to remind me who she'd always been. "Jessica," she said sharply, "Brightwood is not your apartment. It's not a place where people coddle children. If you want Lily to succeed, she has to learn." Before I could respond, another voice slid into the call. Smooth, calm, deep. "Frank." I couldn't help overhearing, he said, like he was doing me a favor. My stomach sank. He continued gently. "Diane is right. Some parents misunderstand discipline because they're emotional, but Brightwood has top results. Our methods work." Oh. Our methods. Like children were experiments. I swallowed hard. "Frank, Lily is 6. "And you're her mother," he replied, almost kindly, "which is why you're reacting this way. But you hired the best school for her. Trust the process." Trust. That word again. The same word that had kept me quiet through every uneasy feeling. Frank's tone lowered just a notch. Not loud, not harsh, but suddenly heavier. "You don't want Lily growing up undisciplined, Jessica. Not in this world." I stared at the dark kitchen window, my reflection faint in the glass. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was talking to family. I felt like I was being warned. The next day, Lily stood in front of the mirror while I fixed her hair. Her hands were clenched so tight, her knuckles were pale. "You'll be okay," I whispered, trying to sound sure. She didn't look at me. She only asked one question, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "Mommy, what's the basement?" My fingers stopped mid-braid. "Why are you asking about the basement?" I asked carefully. Lily's lips trembled. Then she shook her head and pressed her mouth shut like she'd been trained not to say the next part. I kissed her forehead and forced a smile that felt like glass. "It's nothing," I lied, because I didn't want to scare her. And because I still didn't understand that the basement wasn't just a place. It was a weapon. I buried myself in work, telling myself it would pass, that Lily would adjust, that Diane wouldn't let anything truly bad happen to her niece. Then, on Wednesday, at exactly 11:45 a.m., my phone rang in the middle of the busiest moment of my day. It was the school, and something in my chest, the part of me that still knew how to hear danger, went completely silent. I answered. A woman's voice came through, shaky, whispering like she was hiding. "Mrs. Wong, this is Amy Lambert. I'm a new teacher at Brightwood. You need to come right now. Something is wrong with Lily." My mouth went dry. "What happened?" I demanded. "Is she hurt?" A pause, a breath. Then Amy whispered, "I found her. In the discipline room. She's been down there for at least 2 hours." 2 hours. My vision narrowed. "Why?" I choked out. Another pause, longer this time. "For spilling a cup of milk." I didn't hang up. I didn't say goodbye. I just grabbed my coat and ran, because in that moment, every nightmare, every ritual with that cup, every whispered promise to be good, all of it finally made sense. And I knew, deep in my bones, that when I walked through Brightwood's doors, I wasn't just going to face my sister. I was going to face Frank, and whatever power he'd built inside that school. I don't remember driving to Brightwood. I remember my hands locked around the steering wheel so tightly they ached. I remember red lights feeling like personal insults. I remember slamming my palm against the dashboard and screaming Diane's name until my voice broke. Every second felt like another betrayal. When I turned into Brightwood's pristine courtyard, white stone walls, banners boasting excellence through discipline, the place no longer looked like a school. It looked like a prison dressed in luxury. I barely parked before throwing the door open and running. Amy was waiting near a side entrance, her face pale, eyes darting around like she expected someone to stop her at any second. She didn't say a word. She just nodded and led me down a narrow hallway behind the administration wing. The further we went, the colder it became. The basement smelled damp, metallic. The fluorescent lights flickered, buzzing faintly, like they were struggling to stay alive. My heartbeat filled my ears so loudly I almost missed it. Crying. Soft, broken, exhausted. I nearly lost control right there. Amy stopped in front of a small gray door at the end of the hallway. A polished brass plaque was screwed onto it. Reflection room. The name made my stomach turn. Amy leaned closer and whispered, "That's what they tell parents. But teachers know the truth. This is the discipline room. Frank designed it." My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. When I opened the door, light spilled into a cramped, windowless space, barely bigger than a storage closet. There was one small chair in the center. The air was thick with mold and fear. And in the far corner, Lily. She was curled into herself, hair tangled and damp, clothes soaked through. Her tiny chest hitched as she tried, and failed, to stop crying. She'd wet herself. Something inside me shattered. "Lily," I breathed. Her head snapped up. For a terrifying second, she didn't recognize me. Then her eyes widened and she scrambled toward me, sobbing, slamming into my legs and wrapping her arms around me with desperate strength. "I'm sorry, Mommy," she cried. "I won't spill anymore. I promise. I promise." I dropped to my knees and held her so tightly she gasped, and I didn't let go. Not even when Amy quietly backed away, closing the door behind her. That's when I felt it. The air shift. I looked up. Diane stood in the doorway. Her expression wasn't guilt or fear. It was anger. "Jessica," she said sharply, "what are you doing here? Who allowed you in this area?" Before I could answer, another figure appeared behind her, tall and broad, blocking what little light reached the room. Frank. The space seemed to shrink as he stepped inside. "This area is restricted," he said calmly. "Only authorized staff." "How long?" I interrupted, my voice shaking violently. "Have you been locking my daughter in a dark room?" Silence. Then Frank smiled. Not a warm smile, a controlled one. "This is an educational method," he replied evenly, "developed by experts. Children with behavioral challenges respond well to structured isolation." "Isolation?" I spat. "She's 6. Diane moved between us, professional mask firmly in place. "If you want Lily to improve," she said, "she has to learn consequences. The reflection room is especially effective for children like her." Children like her. Frank crossed his arms, towering over us. "This is our school. You don't interfere with our methods." I stood, Lily clinging to my neck, her body shaking. "You locked her in the dark for spilling milk," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "She was terrified. She wet herself. How many times have you done this?" Frank stepped closer. "You should think very carefully about what you say next," he murmured. "People who oppose me don't usually land on their feet." That was it. I pushed past him. "I'm taking my daughter," I said, "and I'm reporting this." Frank blocked the door, his face inches from mine. "You don't want to make an enemy of me, Jessica." I met his eyes. "I already have." I walked out with Lily in my arms, my sister's stare burning into my back. I didn't know it yet, but that moment wasn't the end of the nightmare. It was the beginning of Frank's. Because within 24 hours, my job would be gone. My bank account would be frozen, and my name would be dragged through every system Frank controlled. But as Lily buried her face in my shoulder, whispering, "You came for me," I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. I would burn everything down before I let them touch her again. I didn't sleep that night. Every time Lily stirred, I was already there, hand on her back, whispering reassurances I wasn't sure I believed myself. Any sudden sound made her flinch. When a car passed outside, headlights sliding briefly across her bedroom wall, she bolted upright and grabbed my wrist. "They're coming," she whispered. "No," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You're safe. Mommy's here." But safety felt fragile, temporary, like something that could be taken away with a single phone call. After Lily finally fell asleep again, I stepped into the kitchen and picked up my phone. Reporting Brightwood should have been straightforward. That's what I told myself. The first call, to Child and Family Services, was polite but strangely stiff. The woman on the line paused when I mentioned the school's name. "Brightwood Academy?" she repeated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "My daughter was locked in a dark room for hours." Another pause, papers shuffling. "They just received a safety commendation from the city last month." I explained everything again. I was transferred, then transferred again. Each voice sounded more cautious than the last, like they were handling something dangerous. Finally, a firmer voice came on the line. "This is Linda Morales," she said. "Investigation Department. Tell me everything." I did. When I finished, there was silence. Real silence, not the kind filled with typing. Then Linda sighed. "I'll be honest with you, Ms. Wong. Frank Kendall is influential. He donates heavily to city programs. That's why people hesitate." My chest tightened. "But," she continued, "that doesn't mean we ignore child abuse. I'll be there tomorrow." Relief barely had time to settle before my phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Think carefully, Jessica. You're playing with fire." I looked up just as headlights swept across the living room window. A black car sat across the street, engine running, lights off. Watching. Frank. The next morning, the attack began. My manager called first. "There's been an anonymous report about food safety violations tied to your name," he said awkwardly. "We're suspending you pending investigation." By noon, my bank account was frozen. By evening, an email arrived from my landlord about unexpected renovations and non-renewal of my lease. It was surgical, efficient. When Lily asked, "Mommy, why don't you smile anymore?" I had to turn away so she wouldn't see me break. The investigation at Brightwood happened 2 days later, and it was a performance. Only 3 inspectors arrived. Frank greeted them like old friends, laughing, clapping one on the shoulder. Diane stood beside him, composed, confident. When we reached the basement, my stomach dropped. The room was gone. Where darkness and fear had been was now a bright yellow space with windows, art supplies, and cheerful posters. "This is the reflection room," Frank said smoothly. "A creative space." Amy was nowhere to be found. "She resigned this morning," Diane added calmly. "Family health reasons." The inspectors left with blank notebooks. Frank leaned close to me as they walked away. "You see," he murmured, "no evidence, and this is just the beginning." That night, Lily asked me, voice small, "Mommy, Uncle Frank says you're a bad person." I held her and cried silently into her hair. I was losing, until my phone buzzed again. "This is Amy. I have evidence." She'd fled the state. Before the room was changed, she'd recorded everything. Videos, logs, names. For the first time since this began, hope flickered. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. And Frank had underestimated one thing. The truth doesn't disappear just because powerful people want it to. Hope is a dangerous thing. The moment Amy's message appeared on my screen, I felt it surge through me. Warm, electric, terrifying. Because hope meant I was about to push back, and pushing back meant Frank would stop pretending. We met in secret. A small cafe 2 blocks from my apartment, the kind of place no one important ever noticed. Rachel arrived first, scanning the room before sliding into the booth across from me. She'd been my friend since college, sharp, stubborn, and fearless in ways I'd never had to be. When Amy's face appeared on the laptop screen, grainy but unmistakably determined, the air around us changed. "I recorded everything," she said quietly. "Logs, videos, dates, times, kids as young as 3. She shared her screen. There it was, the room, the real one. Dark, windowless. A child-sized chair bolted to the floor. A timestamp in the corner of the video showed Lily's name logged for 2 hours and 12 minutes. My hands shook so badly Rachel had to pause the video for me. "There's more," Amy continued. "I heard them talking once. Frank said fear works faster than patience." Diane didn't argue. That hurt more than I expected. Rachel leaned back, jaw tight. "This isn't just a complaint. This is a story, and the right reporter will blow it open." Frank must have sensed it. My phone rang while we were still watching the files. His name filled the screen. I didn't answer. A message followed seconds later. "Withdraw everything. I'll fix your job, your money, your future. Continue, and you'll lose custody of Lily." I stared at the words. Rachel didn't look away from me. "Once you go public," she said softly, "there's no going back." I thought of Lily in that room, alone, wet, apologizing for existing. "Send it," I said. The story broke 3 days later, and the city exploded. Investigative reports, interviews, parents pulling their kids out of Brightwood overnight. Frank and Diane went on television, denying everything, calling me unstable, bitter, vengeful. They dragged my past into the light, my failed marriage, my exhaustion, my fear. Then came the hearing. The Department of Education building was packed. Frank sat with his lawyers, perfectly composed. Diane avoided my eyes. Amy testified first, then parents, then a former teacher. The room held its breath when a 7-year-old girl stood up, clutching her mother's hand, and whispered about the bad room. Frank finally snapped. "This is absurd," he shouted. "I am a benefactor of this city." That was when Diane stood. Her voice trembled, but it didn't break. "We used the room," she said. "Frank convinced me it was necessary. I was wrong." Frank turned to her, disbelief and fury colliding in his eyes. "You dare betray me?" The evidence kept coming. Financial records, charities, laundered funds. When it was over, the room was silent. Brightwood was suspended. Diane was removed. Frank was under criminal investigation. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. Because power doesn't vanish, it retreats. That night, as Lily slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, my phone buzzed. "You may have won this round, Jessica. I don't forget." I set the phone down. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Because Lily was safe. And that was enough to face whatever came next. 3 months passed. Not quietly, not gently, but with the slow, grinding work of repair. Lily started therapy the week after the hearing. At first, she barely spoke. She clutched her stuffed bunny like armor, eyes flicking to every shadow in the room. But week by week, something softened. The nightmares thinned. The words came back. One afternoon, as we walked out of the therapist's office, Lily squeezed my hand and said, "Mommy, the bad room doesn't live in my head anymore." I cried in the parking lot. She transferred to a new preschool, one built on patience, not fear. The first morning, she skipped ahead of me, backpack bouncing, and turned back with a grin I hadn't seen in months. "Don't be late, Mommy," she laughed. I wasn't. My job came back, quietly, without apology. My bank account was unfrozen. The smear campaign lost momentum as Frank's name became toxic instead of untouchable. He left the city, under investigation, watched, cornered. But I didn't relax. Power doesn't disappear. It waits. Diane came to my door one evening, thinner, eyes red, voice barely above a whisper. She didn't ask for forgiveness right away. She told the truth instead. "I was afraid of failing," she said. And he used that, the same way Dad used to use fear on us. We started family therapy, carefully, slowly, with boundaries. At Lily's therapist's office one afternoon, Diane knelt to Lily's level and said, "I'm sorry I scared you." Lily studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. That was all. Brightwood reopened months later under new leadership. The basement room became an open, emotional space with counselors and sunlight. No locks, no silence. Sometimes late at night, I still check the doors. I still listen for cars outside. Frank's last message sits deleted but remembered. But when Lily sleeps, peaceful, breathing steady, I know something unshakable now. Protecting your child isn't about being fearless. It's about being brave enough to stand up, even when the people you're standing against share your blood. And if you're listening to this, I want you to hear one thing clearly. Ask questions. Demand answers. Trust your instincts. Because no title, no money, no connection is more powerful than a parent who refuses to stay silent.